This may not be one of the more exciting tales that you've heard, but I assure you that it's true. My name is Lindsay, and I'm 16 years old. My best friend has claimed to be a psychic, and has proven his ability several times. He enjoys freaking me out by reading my mind, and knowing what I'm doing while I talk to him on the phone. He told me that he used to have guardian ghosts when he was little, that only appeared by his bedside when he was woken up by nightmares. However, as I do not know the whole story behind his ghost, I'm writing about a different instance where his powers came in handy. One more note on him. He can astral project, meaning that he can send his presence places while his body is sitting comfortably at home. He has only done this with me once, when I was upset and crying while I was on the phone with him. Now for my experience. I was on the phone with my best friend, as usual. It was about midnight, and we had been having a very serious conversation. I was getting very upset, and was curled up on my bed with the phone. We had both been silent for about a minute, when I felt a presence in my room. I said, "You're here, aren't you?" Thinking that he projected himself into my room. He told me that it wasn't him. Suddenly, I was hit with a feeling of pure hatred and evil. Though I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary, I knew exactly where the thing was. I huddled into the corner of my bed as I slowly became hysterical, saying, "There's something here. Get it out. It's here, and it's bad." He told me to block my mind and that he would help me. I kept saying, it's here, until he almost yelled at me. "No, it's not, Lindsay. It's here." I've never heard him say anything that angrily. We were silent again for about 2 or 3 minutes, until I worked up the courage to ask him what happened. He said that it was gone, that he had fought it off, whatever it was. We decided that our serious conversation had probably just opened up a window to some bad karma and had manifested itself in almost physical form. For the next few days, I avoided my room as much as possible. We decided to keep the serious conversations to a minimum for a while. I've had several experiences with entities, mostly I believe evil. They seem to be attracted to me. When I was about 5 to 8, my sister had a poster of E.T. that I was deathly afraid of. Its eyes would follow me, and I feel like I saw it wink. I think it might be a spirit working through it. When we moved from the house, I had the guts to rip it in half. Incidentally, my sister told me that last year she was deathly afraid of it too, but kept it because it scared me. Then when I was 10, I just turned out my nightlight and was starting to snuggle under the covers when I felt someone tickling the blankets around me. I was really sleepy at first, so I thought it was my mom, but the second I realized she went to bed hours ago, I flipped on my back and 2 disembodied hands started choking me. My spirit left my body. This is possible, and I ran down to my parents' room screaming to help me. When I realized I wasn't there, I was back in my bed. I was not dreaming because I had marks on my neck, and I remember the time exactly when I turned out my light. Then when I was 13 in my house, I now stay in one night, I was meditating, and when I was down, I went to blow out my candles and I looked out the window. I saw a short man all in black with glowing red eyes. I couldn't move, and I was petrified until finally I ran to the bathroom. Soon afterwards, I could feel a presence in the room, and I had horrible nightmares. I packed all my stuff up and moved to the empty room next door. I went back later and blessed the room in the name of my goddess and haven't felt it since. When I was 16, me and my friend, her boyfriend, and my boyfriend all went to this graveyard one night because if you went through this clearing, you can jump on top of the crypts and hang out. It was the boyfriend's idea. They were talking amongst themselves, and me and Tiffany were quiet when I heard a little girl's voice directly underneath say "help me" in a whisper. It kept on for a while, every couple of minutes, and kept getting louder. I noticed that every time it happened, Tiffany was looking around, and I asked her if she heard it. She said, "Yeah, it says help me." The guys never heard it. A little time after that, I was riding in a truck with friends, and a big swirl of fire leaped across the road. It almost looked like a tumbleweed the way it swirled. I wasn't on drugs or anything. Neither of my friends saw it. Then sometime this year, currently 19, I was riding along with a friend when I looked out the window and I saw this thing running along the side of the road. I thought it was a large black dog, and I watched as it moved ahead of the car and then darted in front. I screamed, "Watch out," but it disappeared. My friend thought I was crazy. It wasn't just a shadow, because I saw four legs moving, but if it was the ghost of a dog, it was a huge one. It was almost the size of a baby deer. Following this last encounter, I decided it was time to seek counsel from someone more familiar with the paranormal in an effort to make sense out of what was happening to myself and my family. I was fortunate enough to have become friends with a fellow service member whose wife had worked for a time at the Whaley House in Southern California. After relating to him some of the details of our ordeal, he assured me that she too had experienced encounters with the paranormal and would be most interested in hearing what I had to say. I made arrangements to meet with her at her earliest convenience. Cheryl was a very warm, gregarious woman and put me at ease immediately. She encouraged me to be open and honest about everything that I experienced and convinced me that she would believe everything I had to say. She had always been sensitive herself, she said, was well versed in the use and interpretation of tarot cards, and had participated in a great number of successful seance and Ouija sessions. I began my tale. After I'd finished, Cheryl immediately suggested that she and my wife and I make arrangements to meet the following weekend for a Ouija session at our apartment. She advised me not to purchase a board when I told her we did not own one. She claimed that they were dangerous and that she would create a disposable one when she arrived. As I left her, I was both anxious and apprehensive awaiting the weekend. The following Saturday evening, Cheryl arrived as planned, and she immediately asked for a tablet of paper, a felt tip marker, and a roll of adhesive tape. She proceeded to create her Ouija board, fashioning it out of individual squares of paper and taping them to our kitchen tabletop. She then asked if we had a wine glass, which we gave her, and this she placed upside down in the middle of her unique creation. She instructed us to lightly place 2 fingers on each of the bottom of the inverted wine glass, and, shortly after we did as she instructed, she began asking questions to our spirit. The results were immediate and amazing. The wine glass became animated and moved so swiftly that we literally could not keep our fingers upon it. It initially traveled just inside the perimeter of the board in ever-increasing circles. As Cheryl asked questions, it would spell out the answers and then continued on its frenzied journey as before. Judging from the answers we received during the course of our questioning, we all surmised that our ghost was actually my guardian spirit and had been with me since birth. She was, according to the answers we received, responsible for every paranormal experience I and my mother had ever witnessed. Her name was Rachel, but she indicated that she preferred that everyone other than myself referred to her as Z. When my wife, during the course of our questioning, addressed Z by her given name, my guardian spirit became highly agitated as the wine glass suddenly shot out from beneath our fingers and struck my wife in the collarbone. Cheryl suggested that we immediately terminate the interview at that point. She proceeded to remove all of the paper squares used to create our makeshift board from the table and burned them in our kitchen sink. Following this, she took the wine glass we had been using as a planchet and poured a liquid into it that she had gotten from a container in her purse. She mumbled something, drank the liquid from the glass, washed it in the sink, and returned it to my wife. Cheryl then sat down with us and explained that in her estimation, Rachel evidently considered me to be her property, so to speak, and was extremely jealous of any female that challenged her authority in that regard. She stated that Rachel was very empathetic to my emotional state and would tend to display more often when I was ill or at ease, or in a state of emotional distress or confusion. She suggested that my wife's and my recent reconciliation, following a brief separation, and my upcoming release from the service were likely contributing factors to the frequency and intensity of our recent experiences with her. She was somewhat concerned, she said, about Rachel's blatant hostility towards my wife, but felt that as our lives returned to normal, Rachel would follow suit. She was right for the most part, until shortly after we moved. Following my release from the service, we returned back to the Midwest and lived for a brief period of time with my in-laws. During this time, my wife gave birth to our youngest son, and our experiences with Rachel became nothing more than unbidden recurring memory. By May of 1977, I was gainfully employed again, and by the following month, we were able to secure a townhouse which we leased for a year. Shortly after arrival in our new home, Rachel decided it was time to become reacquainted. She began innocently enough. Initially, the TV just began changing channels by itself again. Then we noticed that the water taps would shut off by themselves as we washed dishes, bathed, or showered. Usually it was the hot water that would be slowly extinguished, leaving us to wash in the icy cold water. Unless, that is, Rachel was upset with us for some reason. Then it was the cold water, scalding us until we realized what was happening and could defeat our efforts. The faucet knobs would be visibly turned to the right and be shut off. It took us a while to notice this, but we eventually did. We became accustomed to keeping an eye on the faucets so we could thwart her attacks. I should stress here that while I say we, and I did witness many of these occurrences, I was not subject to them personally. When I say we, I mean my wife and extended family or friends that came to visit us. I should also note that Rachel never harmed or attempted to frighten the kids. I did, however, feel the effects of the furnace when it began turning on by itself during the summer months and the air conditioning turning on in the winter. It got to the point where my wife and I trained ourselves to subconsciously listen for almost the click of the thermostat control, so we could react quickly and accordingly. As odd as it sounds, these daily interruptions to our lives became almost commonplace and second nature until they were brought to our attention, sometimes hysterically, by our house guests, at which point we attempted, as rationally as we could considering the circumstances, to explain the phenomena. We were for the most part able to assuage their fears. That is until my friend Dave spent the night. Dave was a lifelong friend of mine who called me unexpectedly one cold wintry night and explained that he had been physically evicted from his apartment by his wife, under threat of death should he attempt to remain, he claimed. He desperately needed a place to stay until she calmed down and became rational, so I, of course, invited him over immediately. He arrived at our townhouse shortly thereafter, carrying a sleeping bag and an overnight case containing what little he was able to stuff into it as his wife chased him around their apartment. He filled me in on all the juicy details of the latest arguments, and then, reluctantly, I was forced to bid him goodnight as it was getting late and I had to get up for work very early the following morning. He was settled in a sleeping bag on the living room couch, watching TV as I headed upstairs to bed. I didn't see Dave for a very long time after that. When I awoke the following morning and headed downstairs for my coffee and car keys, I immediately noticed that while Dave's sleeping bag, shirt, and shoes were still lying on the floor where he had left them the preceding night, he and his pants were nowhere to be found. Somewhat alarmed, I immediately went to the kitchen window, looked out into the parking lot, and noticed that his car was also gone. Had his wife called him at her house and begged him to come home, with a phone in our bedroom, we would have surely been awakened by its ringing, and Dave had assured me that his wife had no idea where he had gone. Had he called her perhaps? If so, why then hadn't he dressed before he left? Especially considering an extreme cold and with a foot of snow on the ground, there had to be a reasonable explanation, or so I hoped. Returning home from work that night, I immediately attempted to contact Dave by telephone at his apartment. The operator informed me that his line had been temporarily disconnected. I later learned that it had been ripped from the wall during he and his wife's argument. Growing more concerned, I then called his brother and was relieved to hear that he had indeed returned home to his wife the previous night. The circumstances regarding his sudden, half-nude departure from our house, however, was going to be left for Dave to explain, but Dave made no effort to contact me at all. 2 weeks to the day later, I was finally able to contact Dave by telephone at his apartment. He assured me that he and his wife were doing fine again and then oddly asked if I would personally return or mail to him the belongings left at our house that night. I suggested that he stop by for them one evening and fill me in on the details surrounding his sudden departure, but he emphatically refused. In fact, he stated that he would never set foot again in our house if he had anything at all to say or do about it. I was extremely perplexed at this point, and it took me 2 months and a 12-pack of beer to finally pry the story out of him, during which time I held his possession hostage. It seems that shortly after I had gone to bed that night, Dave decided that he should also get some sleep. He told me that he had gotten up from the couch and turned off the television and then slipped back into his sleeping bag. Almost immediately after he had settled in, facing the back of the couch, he said that someone tapped him on the shoulder. Assuming it was me, he turned over to face where he thought I would be standing and saw only the darkened living room. As my mother had years earlier, Dave said he came to the immediate conclusion that I was messing around with him and simply rolled over to go back to sleep. As soon as he did, he said, came the shoulder tapping once again. He claimed that he jumped up and turned on the lamp at the end of the couch, hoping to catch me as I ran to hide, and was surprised to find the living room once again empty. Somewhat unnerved, but again blaming me, he turned off the light, this time deciding to face the living room. The tapping now came from behind the couch. He ignored it. It came again. He again refused to acknowledge it. Suddenly, he said, one end of the couch, with him on it, was propelled approximately 3 feet into the air and dropped to the floor. He struggled out of the sleeping bag and bolted straight upstairs to where my family and I slept. He stood, he said, outside our bedroom doorway for almost 10 minutes, torn between awaking us or fleeing. After calming down, he decided to go to the bathroom and return to his sleeping bag, having rationalized that what he experienced could be attributed to that night's activities with his wife. He returned downstairs and headed for the half bath, located directly off of the kitchen. As he approached the bathroom doorway, he said that the bathroom light suddenly turned on by itself, and the door slammed shut directly in his face, missing him by only fractions of an inch. That was the final straw. He grabbed his pants from the floor near the end of the couch. He would have left them too, he said, had it not been for the fact that they held his car keys, and ran for the outside door. As he ran through the snow, struggling to get into his pants, he claimed that as he looked back towards the apartment windows, the bathroom curtains parted and the light went out. Dave held true to his word and never returned to our apartment again. I delivered his belongings to him personally as he requested. This is not a personal experience, but that of a friend. Her mother had been recently divorced and decided to buy a cute little house for herself and her 2 daughters to live in. The house was that of an elderly lady who was confined to a wheelchair. Before they moved in, the place needed a good cleaning, and some of the carpets needed changing, most notably the one upstairs, which had been the woman's bedroom and where she painted with oil paints, because there had been a worn path from the wheels on her wheelchair through the upstairs room where the lady had spent most of her time. The girls took the upstairs room, and their mother was downstairs. In the beginning, my girlfriend would hear noises during the night, but would think it was either the house settling or her imagination. Then she started to smell paint for no apparent reason, with or without the windows open, breeze or no breeze, night or day. The sounds became more defined and would often happen often. She told me that it sounded as though someone was moving around her room. She would hear the squeak of wheels, and the smell of paint was so strong. I never had the impression of fear from her. She often joked and said it was her room before it was mine, and she has every right to be here. In the 3 years that they lived in the house, before they moved out of state, the carpet in her room had to be changed 3 times because the same worn marks had been there when they first bought the house. It kept coming back. When I was little, my family just moved into a house in Des Moines, and the first night we stayed there, I had to sleep on the couch in the living room, with me being the oldest and all. Well, let's get on to the point. Here's what happened. I got up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I came back, and the last thing I saw was my covers and my pillow. I started to shut my eyes, but then I opened them up for some reason, because I got a really strange feeling that I couldn't describe. And I saw a man right in front of me. He almost looked like an Amish guy, and he had these weird green eyes, and he just stared and glared at me. It felt so demonic. It felt almost evil. I couldn't even sleep. After that, I just froze. Then I put my head under my covers and screamed, "Mom, Dad." Just before my parents rushed in to see what was the matter, the Amish guy looked me dead in the eye, and he said one thing. He said, "If you ever tell anybody this happened, then you're going to die." The thing was, he was telepathically communicating with me. He didn't say it from his mouth, but he said it through his mind. I'm not sure if that makes sense or anything, but that's just what I felt. That was probably the most scariest ghost story I could ever tell to anybody, so I hope you enjoyed it. Hey guys, it's Phantom of Darkness here, and I know I missed Monday's upload, and it's a delay, and this is going up really late for you guys in the US, and maybe other times in, the world of the world. But anyway guys, I really hope that you can share this video, comment, like, and subscribe, because there's some good stories in it, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. Hopefully my reading was flawless as usual, but it's really not because it sucks. Leave a cat in the description box and I'll pick him up and I'll adopt him. But my cat is going to narrate some stories for you guys. He's going to go meow, 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 just to impress you guys because he really likes narrating stories to you guys. So I just thought I'd throw that in. But seriously, guys, thank you so much again for participating in the comments section as usual. You guys are amazing. And I'm not going to lie, I am kind of worn out from the day. Working hard on this video, making sure it's as perfect as it possibly can be, and now, see, I'm slurring my words, so you can tell how just tired I am. But it's worth it, and it's always worth it, guys. It's the best video that I've ever made in my life, says nobody ever, except my mom. So, you just gotta deal with that. I'm not making any sense, guys, but that's where you're at home. You love hearing a Phantom of Darkness video where I just say nonsensical things, and here we are again, and I'm back. But seriously, guys, I'm just gonna stop saying anything anymore. I'm not gonna edit anything right now because, you know what, that's stupid. I don't want to edit myself because I'm not perfect, and you guys know that. But seriously, before I leave, Phantom of Darkness is signing out, so good night, good morning, and I'll see you in the next video before I poop my pants. See you guys.